Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Geeta Sharifi, Chief Financial Officer, Lifelong Learning Administration Corporation. We're really excited to have Geeta and our panelists for a panel discussion titled The Power of Analytics, Driving Long-Term Value for Finance. Welcome, Geeta. Over to you.
Thank you, and thank you, audience, for being here. We have a great panel today to discuss power of analytics, and I would like to just go around very quickly to have my panel actually here introduce themselves. We'll start with Dan.
Hey, everybody. I'm Dan Johnson, Director of Content Accounting at Roku. Roku is America's #1 TV operating system. Before Roku, a lot of entertainment experience at Netflix, Disney, Fox, Pokemon Company. So all of these companies use a lot of data analysis to figure out what shows we should produce for the consumers, how the shows are performing. So I'm excited to meet everyone on this panel and chat with everyone, as well as everyone streaming in.
Thank you, Dan. Nayab, you want to go ahead, introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Geeta. Hey, everyone. I'm Nayab Siddiqui. I'm CFO and Head of Strategy for Resi 360. Resi 360 is a community platform which is focusing on human connections, well-being, and travel and tourism. I'm based out of Silicon Valley. And before this, I used to work with Meta. I was heading the finance and business operation team for the fintech division. I also worked with Visa as their vice president of finance. So a lot of data analytics and data related experience, some investment banking experience, making all those flashy models. So I'm excited to be part of this group and looking forward to a great discussion today.
Thank you so much. And Hannah.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Hina Agrawal and I work for Contour Brands. It's more popularly known for its products, which is Wrangler Jeans. I'm the CFO for Global Wrangler. I have my Wrangler on. And I started in this role 2 years ago and added supply chain finance to my responsibilities earlier this year. So a lot of analytics going into from a consumer standpoint, from a demand forecasting, SKU rationalization, lots of different things with applications. I started my career at Procter & Gamble. I was there for 10 years. So fully embedded in the CPG world, worked on great brands like Crest, Oral-B, Gillette, Old Spice, etc. And then moved on from CPG to retail, which has, retail is known for detail. So I was with Walgreens, which then became Walgreens Boots Alliance, and then a couple years with Underwriters Laboratories. So I strongly, going from CPG retail and now back to a consumer-based business, the power of data and analytics is so crucial, especially to the finance function, to bring value to the business. So I'm really excited to be a part of this panel and share what I know and also learn from everyone else here.
That's great. Thank you, Hannah. I'm just so that the audience know, I've been a CFO for 20 years. We manage public schools, charter schools in California and out of California. Majority of our businesses in California. Also, we have a private international school. So been a CFO for 20 years. Obviously, we've all experienced some kind of analytics, experience, and it's moving really fast. So I like to ask the audience, based on your expertise, How have you seen the use of data and analytics for finance evolved over the past year? And if you have any examples, if you don't mind to share, maybe we can start with Dan.
Sorry, I had trouble with the mute button there. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to kick off the conversation. I think most recently, the transformation has been really unlocking the tools of analytics for the FP&A team. When I first started getting used to using analytics, I think I had to learn Python and I had to take a general course in linear algebra just to kind of understand how the data worked and get an understanding of how it all worked together. But now all of this is done for you. And we have systems like Power BI and we have and Tableau for visualizations that really give all of the power to the finance function and the accounting function. And so self-servicing a lot of these reports is kind of something that's relatively new that I think empowers all of us to be data analyzers and really take control of the data themselves. And I think from an entertainment side, we're looking at a lot of different data. We're looking how consumers consume the content. We're trying to decide what shows to produce and what shows can sell ads against. And so it's probably similar to kind of every other industry in some sort, where we're trying to piece together the information with all of the data we have. So one, we have more data than ever, is just pulling in as much information as possible and trying to create the correlations we can. But two, it's really now FP&A and accounting is empowered to create our own metrics and kind of try to understand the data on their own. So that's really exciting that I've seen evolve in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's so amazing. Anyone else wants to jump in? Nayab or Hannah? Either one.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Dan. I think there are a lot of components of self-service that this has enabled to free up time to do more value-added and complex analysis. What I've seen is really in the last few years, the evolution has been more sophistication and automating more of the transactional and reporting processes that drive cost savings to analytics and modeling that drive the top line and margin. So at the low end of the spectrum, you have things like report automation, exception reporting, data visualization, and tools that Dan talked about, like Power BI and Tableau. And then you also have process automation through RPA, robotic process automation, for tasks that are repeatable, to standardize them, reduce error and fraud. These have now become table stakes that we need to deliver cost savings and efficiency. I think, as things become more complex, as we add more data sets, more processes, multifunctional processes, and then we start looking at stakeholders that are not just internal, but also external. When you talk about consumer data coming in through your .com websites, I think in that context now, the next level, when we talk about machine learning and AI, those are not just buzzwords anymore, because organizations are looking at how do we take these complex data processes and get continuous feeds versus static versions where you do regressions once a month. To really make connections and real-time decisions that will improve your top line, give you better sales, improve your margins. So I think that evolution has gone from the transactional to really more sophisticated decision-making based on data in the last few years.
Yeah, that's very true. Nayab, do you have any comment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking at it from two different angles. One angle is like how finance function has evolved over a period of time, specifically with the advent of big data and the utilization of that. So if I look back like 20 years, 15 years, finance function was totally different. It was a backward-looking function where most of the information was coming from different other teams, and they were just a compiler of information. Now, with the advent of like data analytics techniques, specifically availability of big data, what's happening is that now finance is sitting in the forefront of all these functions. It's like sitting right alongside the business, and rightly so. Reason being, the data, the power of data that finance can fetch and finance can provide insight into that. I mean, that's unparalleled. And that's the shift I've seen during the last 10, 15 years. And having said that, I mean, specifically going down into the business route, if you look at the composition of the teams, earlier it was mostly accounting background, people with accounting background. Now we look at people coming from finance background, people coming from data science background specifically. And I've seen, like in my career, that now every good finance team has got a data science component into that. And that's where they are adding a lot of value, because all the forward-looking analytics has to be done by somebody who's well versed in that. So that's the how the structure has been changed over a period of time. Talking specifically about the involvement as such, if you look at again, if you look back, it was the pricing function was never under finance; it was a business function. The revenue ascertainment function was never been touched upon by finance. The product assignment or the ROI was never been determined by finance, but now it is. So the overall finance function has evolved over a period of time, and thanks to the data analytics and the new techniques that are being implemented. Talking about some of the experiences, like for instance, given my background with the payment industry, if you look at it, I mean, pricing is one of the most important component, and that's where the finance team had been, creating a lot of value by ascertaining what are the different risks in different markets, what is the different type of product that could be rolled out in one market versus another. And likewise, for instance, for travel industry, every, I mean, in a plane, every seat has got different pricing components. Every seat, if I'm sitting in one seat, the other seat next to me has got a total different pricing structure. How did it come through? It's coming through using the finance function or data analytics function, which is looking at the trends which are going on. What is the time of the year when you are flying? When did you book? How many days ahead of that, right? How much luggage you are carrying versus which seat you are taking. So all these different analytics or data points, they are being used by the finance teams most of the time. And that's where we are creating value using big data, data analytics, and predictive analytics techniques.
That's fantastic. Isn't that amazing that we're all like becoming technology experts suddenly as a CFO? Obviously, like I'm sure all of you guys work very directly. If technology reports to you, which does most of the CFOs, but if not, like you, I'm sure collaborate with technology department very closely. But one thing I just wanted to ask our experts here, if you can give me some real world examples of how you've harnessed the power of predictive analytics, in your role, in your organization, and how that has improved your organization in general. Maybe Hannah?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I would say we are on a journey. I don't think we are there where we want to be, but one of the areas, applications that we are constantly upgrading is the power of predictive analysis and scenario planning in demand forecasting. It has been a very challenging time, after 2019 and going through COVID, coming out of COVID, supply chain disruptions. The apparel industry has, been in an over inventory situation. So demand forecasting is like front and center. And, how do we use, so we've been incorporating more and more dynamic data feeds for leading indicators, like what are the macroeconomic factors that affect, the general consumption, like inflation, wage growth, demographic trends, even weather patterns when it's too hot or too cold. Combine that with industry factors like market growth, competitive shifts, consumption trends, to company-specific factors like, what are our sales by style, channel, size, to really hone in on a better demand forecast so that we are producing to what we think the consumer and what the data is telling us the consumer is going to buy over the next 12 to 18 months. So what we've done is really replaced a lot of static regression with more dynamic data feeds. And like I said, we are on a journey because we are measuring forecast accuracy as a guide to see if the measures that we are taking in place, that we are taking in account, are they really impacting our forecast accuracy at the size, SKU, style level. So at the lowest SKU level, are we actually making an impact when we change our size scale, when we incorporate channel view into the data feeds. And a key watch out here is also what is the synergy between the human knowledge and system predictions. So like I said, we've been through the pandemic, and comparing back to 21 and 20, which would feed into your regression models, has become a difficult task because none of those were normal years. So we are also looking at what weight do we assign to the history that we are using in addition to forward-looking indicators to predict that demand. So removing those anomalies and exceptions and using the power of historical data as well as leading indicators from multiple sources is helping us with improving our demand forecasting accuracy, I would say. That's one application we're in the middle of.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I mean, we used to just have these KPIs and industry KPIs, right? Where would those numbers come from? And now we have a lot more data, and there's a lot more data out there too. So those comparisons are very critical. If you could use the power of these analytics or these softwares or whatever that's out there with AI. Anyone else has any comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna jump off what Hina's already brought up, but I think we're all kind of in a process of getting better and refining the how to use data analytics over a period of time, and probably no one has gotten it perfect, and that's what's exciting about this. We're all learning from each other, and we're all building new processes, and I think we're at the dawn of even hyper automation through ChatGPT, and just the functionality of that hasn't even been touched yet. So really exciting about the future. Some of the things, that I've done in the past is like, I think, brought it up and Nayab as well, as, breaking out between like the predictive analytics of like, let's bring all the information we can to make the best choices we can for what content we produce. Like, should this content be greenlit or not? What are the indicators that show whether content will do good? And you can just bring in the information you have in your systems that you have internally, and you can bring in outside data like from IMDb, like, do Brad Pitt movies do good? Do Sandra Bullock movies? So it's really exciting in entertainment because there's a lot of outside data that you can bring and create correlations and regressions off of. But what I liked Hina was saying also as well is like from an operational side to create like some of these robotic processes to automate our tasks on a day-to-day basis. And I think Nayab brought this up before, where when I started in accounting, there's rooms of accountants. There's rooms and rooms and rooms of accountants, all with like, hats and pencil protectors. But, over time, automation has made those accountants shift into finance and into other value-added streams. And I think that will continue to go in that direction. And what us as finance leaders need to be able to do is understand data and articulate it. We need to be storytellers and telling the story of what the data is saying. So all these teams have data analysis, but it's up to us to tell the business what this means and to translate it for the business. So that's kind of what I'm focused on for the companies I've worked for.
Thank you. Nayab, do you have any comments?
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically talking about like the most recent experiences, I've been using scenario analysis for quite some time, but the most recent was around the time when pandemic hit us, and we being related to the travel industry, travel industry was the hardest hit industry at that point in time. So all our models just went for a toss in a day. And whatever scenario we were building, they were working on one day, the other day it went for a toss because sectors were getting closed, airlines were being grounded. One day, one country was opening, the other day, the other one was closing down. So it was a havoc, right? And all the models that we had been preparing earlier, they were based upon certain assumptions. All those assumptions were no more relevant. So we were literally, doing our scenario analysis on a daily basis, every day, looking at the news, looking at the data coming in from different sources, and try to plug those data in to find out what's our revenue going to be in the next one quarter. We couldn't even see beyond that, given the changes that were happening at that point in time. So I think that's where we really use the power of predictive analysis, scenario analysis, agile planning, to the best of our ability. So that's one great experience that we had thanks to COVID. Not a good one, but yeah, a great one for learning.
And I have a question for the panel here, just kind of jumping off of that. Like from a scenario analysis side, I've noticed that we got rid of the budgeting and forecast on a ongoing basis. It's all the time now. It's just like scenario, a real-time forecast that we just constantly iterate. And I think we can only do that with the analytic tools that we have.
That's very true. I mean, I know in my old times, like all other companies, we always did very long-term strategic planning because our data kind of was constant, right? I mean, we had set of data that we work with, and we use that to do projections. Now, yeah, as you said, everything changes on a daily basis, so your projection changes. So when somebody tells me, give me a 5-year strategic plan, it's impossible because things change a lot faster. So I think 1 year would be good enough. And then we can always reanalyze on a regular basis. But, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of tools to do analytics. How do you guys ensure that analytics are accurately used and your team are trained and skilled actually to use it? Who wants to go first?
Maybe I can
Go
go
ahead.
first. Yeah. I mean, how we approach this particular question, I always look at it from 4 different angles. One is data. The second is my team. The third one is my tools and technology. And the fourth one is the organizational behavior. So basically what happens is that unless and until you don't have the right set of data available, it's not possible for us to, do any kind of forecasting or use that data for the benefit of the organization. So the first pillar is data, reliability of data, source of data, where is it coming from, what is the depth, is it really relevant or not? Because one biggest problem that we always face is there's huge set of data available, but is that data really relevant for us or not? A lot of time people spend n number of hours, digging and finding out something which is not even there. So relevance for me is most important, and that's where the value lies. And then of course, once it's relevant, it has to be like coming from a reliable source. Otherwise, I mean, we are not getting to a meaningful conclusion. So data is definitely most important. As far as a team is concerned, one thing which I always propagate is like learning, because every other day there's a new tool coming out. Every other day there's a new technology or new approaches coming out. So it's always important for us to have, number one, retention of our team. Number two, keep them abreast with the changes. And the third and the most important thing, which I always feel, is their understanding of the business. If they don't understand business and they're only looking at data as some set of numbers, then they are not going to create value for the organization. So that's something which I always propagate, that go out, talk to people, learn about the business. Only then you will be able to find out the right KPIs, the right drivers, which will be able to use to create those predictions and come up with build some scenarios and use the data for the best. And then of course technology. Again, the moment you open up, you start searching that what kind of technologies are available, you would be sort of flabbergasted by the numbers. Every other company is coming out, and which is the best technology, you never know. So I think, I mean, one thing once we go out for a certain technology, adopt those tools, I feel that we have to just stick with them for quite some time, get them into our learning or muscle memory, and then use them for the best rather than keep jumping. Because I've seen companies which keep changing technology every other day, and it never works, because you have to get through the drill. You have to get through the data analytics in a certain sort of fashion. And the third one is, fourth one is the most important thing is organizational behavior. If you don't have data-driven approach, you'll fail. If we keep working in silos, we'll fail. So these are some of the important things which I always feel are important for us to succeed with data analytics. And of course, it's a never-ending story. It's a journey.
Yeah, but how about the skill set? You know, I mean, obviously all these technology coming out, all these tools are new. And I mean, you could have people in your team that are, you know, very close to retirement age. You know, they could care less to even learn, you know, but they are great, you know, they're doing a fantastic job. So we have that challenge. And then also you know, the skill set, right? Not everybody is skilled to use these tools. How are you managing that? What are your, I mean, how do you train your team? And are they trainable? Are these skills that are trainable?
Yeah, in our case, again, I mean, I worked with my current company. We don't have a huge team, so it's very difficult sometimes to keep shifting people. It's for larger teams that I had, it was easier to assign people to different jobs based upon their capacity, capability, learning capacity. So that was much easier. You keep rotating. But for smaller teams, I think it's very important for us to hire the right people and place them for the right for the right jobs. And to your point, I mean, you're absolutely right. A lot of time, people don't have the capacity or even the interest to keep learning. That's a challenge, and for that, we have to find them a different job maybe, and try to use them. For instance, I mean, again, I'm very simplistic. If somebody has got a knack for historical accounting or pure accounting, and that person doesn't want to get into data analytics, I think it's better for him to just focus on that, because we all have our own what you call strengths and weaknesses. If we play by those strengths of weaknesses and don't sort of judge them, I think we can hone the best out of them rather than just pushing something on them and trying to make them learn something which they don't want to.
Well, thank you. Has anyone have had any examples on how they have overcome specific challenge by using predictive analytics?
I would like to just real quick just jump on kind of what Naib said, as well as from what we kind of experienced also was we wanted to make sure figure out each member of the team, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and really focus on, say, if there's a data analytics person that we can have train the team just from a general sense of data, how to clean data, what data means, what questions you should ask of the data, just the general sense of how to use data. And we can use a weekly or monthly meeting as part of our kind of agenda to push data, because I think it starts from the top. The leaders have to have a vision, and that vision is a data-driven vision. And if you think about everything from a data-driven standpoint, it forces the team to also think about it in that standpoint. They want a leader that has a vision, and they want to know they're moving in that direction. So really focusing the intent of the team towards moving in that direction, I think, is really important, because then you have starting the conversations within the team where they train each other. I learned this tool, you should check out this tool, and then have it in a time during your meeting where you can talk about different projects people are working on and how they've used the tools in order to further the project. But I think it starts with, what Naib said, what are we trying to do? What's the question? I think where people mess up is they just use a lot of data and they don't know what the question is. They just pull in data and can't make sense of it, or go down the wrong path and then get frustrated. What's the question we're trying to answer first? And then we can move from there. But training and maybe even going outside the company and using some third-party training might be appropriate here or there, desk procedures, something where we can just kind of quickly understand what's the point of what we're trying to do. I think all makes sense for, how to prioritize learning in this environment. Sorry to jump back.
No, that's really great point. Good point. Hannah, go ahead.
I would say, one of the challenges when you start with all this data analytics is having a single source of truth, having that data integrity. In one of the companies I was in, it was full of engineers. Everyone was great with technology. We had 500 Power BI reports, and people were reconciling between reports. So what we did was, as a finance organization, said, finance is going to be the single source of truth. All other reports have to match to that. We're not going to be reconciling. So that's that data integrity and having that foundation is so critical. The other thing I completely align with Dan, like what we also did was align upfront on what is the use case for these different dashboards that finance was going to source as the single source of truth. What is the desired business outcome? And then training the end users to derive success from this application. In terms of the team itself, having that cross training and also making sure that they're applying that data. So there is a self-service component and there's an application. So now that you freed up your time from, just aggregating the data and making sure it's there, how are you now going to apply it? So we've been applying it for customer profitability, for example. And we are using that, whether it's pricing analysis, total customer profitability analysis. Well, how is that going to influence our negotiations with different customers? Because now we have a single source of truth versus sales saying this is the information, marketing saying something else, merchandising saying something else. We have one customer P&L, and how are we going to use that in our negotiations going forward? So doing those analytics and converting it to recommendations, reviewing it with decision makers, that also provides practice for the team. And it also feeds into how you now improve those analytic tools based on, your last iteration of what came up, what questions came up in the recommendations, what are additional things we need to add in, or some things that may not be needed are not material that we can do without. And that's kind of a virtuous cycle I see between the data, converting it to information, recommendations, making decisions, and feeding back into how does that inform the data analytics tools and processes.
Mm-hmm. No, fantastic. So I think there's like a lot of, resources out there. There's a ton of tools. How do you prioritize the use of data analytics to improve profitability or growth for your long-term, within your organization? Maybe Dan?
Yeah, I think that in the tech industry and entertainment industry, it's a tough time in the market right now. There's not a lot of resources, so prioritizing investments are key. And I think that's where a lot of these tools kind of unlock the potential of FP&A. Like I said before, earlier in the day, I think groups are getting less and less data analysis support and are expected to do the work on their own. And that's what I'm seeing across the industries, across tech and things like that, where the FP&A is now expected to unlock the potential of data science with limited data analyst resources. And so these tools that automate the processes, the return on investment are immense. And so trying to prioritize the right tool, and then I think I have knocked it out of the park. You got to stick with it. You can't shift a tool every 6 months or every year because you never get used to it. The data is always messy. You'll never get like really great insight. So you commit to a tool and do the best you can with those resources that you've had appropriated with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. One thing that I learned through experience, was that, when you're automating or using these types of tools, first you need to have your manual or transactional process flow done right? So whatever that you're doing, before you move forward and looking even at tools, you need to have your system down. You need to find your pain points. You need to have a good process flow and then go, do the automation. One thing that people do is, they say, oh, they think automation will fix everything or all these tools will fix it, or it suddenly pops out an answer they need, but they haven't really perfected their normal day-to-day operation or process flow. So
that's so true. Like a lot of people what I notice is they automate for automation's sake. And sometimes you think, well, could this process be refined, or is the workflow that can be refined first before we throw in resources for automation?
Exactly.
It's just so important, because I mean, you really nailed it, both Dan and Geeta, because what's happening is that and that's problem with technology, and that's the problem with, when we are implementing technology, we always feel that technology is going to solve everything. Technology is only a tool. It's just a tool that we need to use. For instance, if you buy an iPhone, if you don't use all the apps, all the gadgets, all the options out there, it's not going to do everything for yourself. You have to learn, and you have to learn how to make the best use of it. And to your point, unless and until we don't have the core right, and the core is our structure, our organizational structure, then beyond that, beside that, is basically our processes, procedures. Once that is not intact, and then what kind of data we are getting. In the name of agility, a lot of time this is the mistake we all make in organization, and I've seen it a lot, that in the name of agility, we keep changing our core. And that's where organizations start failing, and they don't get the best out of the data analytics or the technology that they implement. They tend to change their core. To my experience, if we keep the core intact, if we keep refining the core in a way that it's augmenting the technology implemented, technology is augmenting what we have already implemented versus trying to do something new. And then being agility means keep cutting the corners as we move forward rather than cutting the core. So that's something which is very important for a successful technology or data analytics implementation.
Thank you so much. We have one, I'm going to go to the one question, and then we're going to move on to some final thoughts for the audience. So the question is, what recommendations can you make to an organization that is struggling to embrace predictive or data analytics? Who wants to answer that? Hannah, you want to go? Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead.
Hannah, you want to go ahead?
Go ahead. Yeah. So, I think it kind of builds on the conversation we were just having around the process and the tool, and really what is providing the value. We are going through actually something on that right now, where people are recommending a tool and saying, what's the business case for it? What's the return? And our question is really, what do you expect the benefit to be from the tool? We have to say, what is the scope? Just saying we'll implement a tool is not going to create value. So it really has to go into why are we recommending the tool? What is the cost? What is the benefit? What's the phasing? To really understand, is it worth it? And so I think a lot of times people get caught up in buzzwords. And let's implement this tool, that tool, and it will solve the world's problems. But it's at the end of the day, it's an investment decision, whether you're constructing a warehouse or a factory or investing in a new tool. Why are you doing it is like the most important question. What are you hoping to achieve from it? What are the benefits? And then the people who are going to deliver the benefits, do you have buy-in from those people? Because otherwise you're not going to see the return. So I think that is the socialization work and the in-depth work that needs to be done beyond just the superficial, we need a tool, because things are very difficult today. That's not the reason, because things might be difficult because of process issues or some issues that can be solved in other ways. So I think, from my point of view, keeping the business need and outcome front and center, and then figuring out how you want to solve it, whether it's through a process change, people change, system change, and then getting to that answer is more important than starting with the answer as being the tool and then working the business decision after that. So the process needs to start with the business problem and what you're going to solve and how.
Thank you.
That totally makes sense.
Go ahead.
I completely agree on that. Like an example that I have is, we were trying to solve a tool to automate payments from our side, getting the payments to go out, and we had very complex generative AI people come in and try to automate a tool. But if we looked at the process, if we just made slight tweaks to how we write contracts, it just everything flows automated anyway. So like, figuring out the process first before we think all these like predictive analytics and analysis is really key, to the point of like, if you work for a company that is skeptical on data, really you do need leadership buy-in and leadership to have a vision of that. So it's up to us as finance to be influencers and pitch the value, but not to over pitch. It needs to be set expectations of what this tool can do for you. But I've seen it in most companies. If leadership isn't bought into using the data, it just will never take off. So you need to figure out how to influence leadership to buy into the data, to buy into the expectations of the data, and to see the use of the data before you can really expect that company to use data in a pivotal way.
Thank you. In general, like I think doing all these automations and using these tools, you need to also look at all the end user, all the users, right? All the points that it touches, because, even if you have the buy-in from the top, the buy-in from your finance team, like in my case, the principal or the teacher that has to touch that system, might have an issue, right? So you need to like make sure that you have influencers throughout the organization at all levels to get the buy-in, not just from the top. I mean, obviously finance team as well. So I know we're pretty close to the end. There are some other questions, but I think we went through and you answered them throughout the discussion. But I was wondering if each of you could provide the audience some final thoughts and takeaways. You want to start Nayab, and then Dan, and then Hannah?
Sure. A few very high-level thoughts, specifically around like implementation or usage of data analytics techniques or tools. First of all, do it if you need it. So you have to first assess the use case, as Hina and both Dan talked about. Secondly, it's a journey. It's not a one-time fix. It is a journey. It's a learning journey. You have to keep learning. You have to keep changing. You have to keep evolving. Only then you'll have the desired outcomes from a successful implementation. So that's the second bit which we need to be like very cognizant of. Third is always know your drivers. Always know your levers. If it is a set of data, if you can't convert that into meaningful information, then it's just an exercise which will go for waste over a period of time. So unless and until you don't know your outcomes and you don't know what are the levers that are driving those outcomes, your predictive analytics or data analytics approach would tend to fail. So these are the three things I would always like talk about. Know your goal, do it if you want it, if you really want it. And then once you do it right by knowing what you are trying to achieve and how you are achieving it, drivers, levers, all those like items have to be identified beforehand.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, thinking through the next couple of years of data analytics and how it'll evolve, definitely keep learning. I think everyone's, on this call is interested in learning, or they want to, taken part on this call or listened in. So, keep learning, keep looking at the new tools. We're at the beginning of generative AI. How does that impact us in the future? I do think the key things to think about is having a vision. I think leaders and ICs need to have a vision on what these tools can do. I think finance and accounting need to also not only learn the tools, but need to learn communication. Like, how do you tell the story of the data? How do you influence data? And I think the ones that are successful will be able to tell stories and have a point of view. What is the data telling you and why you should care about the data? That point of view is going to be immensely valuable. If there's so much data out there, and if you just say, well, it looks like this, or it could look like this, but it might say this, that doesn't lead anyone to a good decision. Have a point of view and be able to communicate well, and you'll be very successful in the future.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah, and I won't repeat the points Nayab and Dan already made, but I'll go back to what I started with. I think the advancements we are seeing in analytics, automation, these are very exciting. Just when I think about from an organization development, finance, accounting, it frees people up from routine tasks to really think like business people, and thinking and having the capacity to think like business people, go up the value chain from what we are offering our business partners, to focus on more complex and advanced problem solving, I think is huge for the finance and accounting teams, and from a personal development and a function development. And I think, just as you're going through that progression and going up the value chain, keeping your eyes focused on how this data can be converted to information to use for decision making and optimizing our return on investments, I think that's to me is exciting, because no one wants to do boring work. So the more we can automate it and use that data to drive decision making, the more fun everyone's job becomes. And so I think we are on a great journey, and I have seen it's almost like we are making step changes in the last few years, maybe because of COVID and all other things, but it's exciting to see the ball rolling and snowballing into much more appetite from organizations to go that route versus what you might have had before. So
Thank you so much. I know, a great conversation. Thank you for all of your thoughts, and I hope the audience has taken some point away, and they can go back and prioritize and do use these predictive tools. They're very useful, and definitely train their team. I mean, I personally, having my whole finance team, I have over 70 people in my finance team, getting trained on Power BI and ChatGPT, just to make sure that they can use these tools properly, right? So thank you so much. I'll pass it on to Nick for final thoughts.
Great. Well, thank you all for such an amazing panel discussion. This was great. And I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event.